Games made by a small number of people are often being described as retro, like looking backwards, and for me there's not primarily an element of nostalgia to it. I know to some people that's more of a factor. I'm just trying to make the best things I can make. And looking backwards, the early video games were often made by much smaller teams. So they had a budgetary constraint, which is not the same as, but produce similar limitations to what a lot of independent developers work with today. So yeah, a lot of what's comparable between contemporary indie games and early video games is that we make similar decisions based on similar restrictions. The big restriction we don't have that they did have is the technological restriction. Obviously we're still limited by the limits of computer science and current hardware, but it's if you look through the history of video games, there's a lot of the time the most mainstream games were trying to make the highest fidelity simulated world that they could, given the constraints that they had at the time. And that's not even what I'm trying to do. And not what a lot of game developers are trying to do, but it's, for some reason, that's like the face of the medium. And it's interesting that some of the early developers were making choices, choosing sometimes to have reduced fidelity of simulation in order to fit the hardware, sometimes choosing reduced fidelity of simulation to fit their budgetary team size constraints. Often those were kind of in alignment because the hardware limitations didn't permit them at first to gain much by putting in 100 extra people working on it. Once there was space to fit what 100 extra people could do, then some companies increased team size to achieve that. And some of the decisions we as indie developers make today are to make something given our limited resources, and we don't as much have to make the decisions given our limited computational resources, but still, like, that comes up as a factor. Some of the decisions that the early video game developers made probably primarily for technological reasons, by happy accident turned out to be good design choices as well. So yeah, like basically what I'm aiming at is good game design, and so certainly I will choose reduced fidelity of realistic simulation if it makes a better game from my values of what is a good game design. Which, like, if your value is that good game means as realistic simulation as possible, then that maybe sounds like nonsense. Maybe I should. Oh, it's a little bird flying. So maybe I should try to articulate what is a good game to me, but I don't know. I feel like if you look at my work, you see what I'm trying to achieve. As to some extent, I have succeeded in making things good by my particular lights. So that is a bit more preamble than I meant to do, but yeah, we'll just accept. The specific example I had in mind is looking at Rogue again. In Rogue, you're on a 80 by 20 grid. There's a dungeon with a few rooms in it. A staircase. When you go down the staircase, the level above is thrown away. It's not recorded, and clearly that's a memory constraint issue, right? If you could keep track of every level you visited, why wouldn't you? Like, maybe reasons. Well, keeping, yeah. If you may as well keep track if you can, but there's the choice to not be able to revisit previous levels is actually, I find, a good design choice, and I think all of my released roguelikes do not allow returning to a previous level. Not for technological reasons, for design reasons. So in the case of Rogue, I can't tell for certain if that was a technological choice or a design choice, because it was probably the right thing from both perspectives. But looking at the games in the genre that followed shortly afterwards, it was very... As soon as it was feasible to store lots of levels of memory and be able to revisit them, that's what games started doing. Not all, though. There are basically two branches of old school roguelikes. The nethack branch allows revisiting levels, but the Angband branch, Moria and many different Angbands, when you go back to a previous dungeon floor, a new level is generated. So that's... As a child, I didn't like that because from a perspective of a realistic kind of fantasy world, it didn't make as much sense. Although you can, I don't know, it's a chaos dungeon, blah blah blah, everything is mutable all the time, but in a imagined physical space, it makes sense to just be able to go back to the room you were just in, whatever. It's interesting the different design spaces that are opened up by not revisiting levels and they're as you left them, and revisiting levels, and they're randomized each time. So like the nethack style, if you revisit levels and they're the same as you left them, what that means is that at any point of the game you can travel all the way back to somewhere you were before, and so if you'd left something, if you'd taken as much as you could carry but there were more resources around, you can go back and get them once you've used up what you could carry. And that the questions that poses for the game design are, is that an interesting thing to do? Is that, what are the constraints what are the things that push against doing that? Like food resources, various timers that make it possible to take treks back and forth, but you're running out of time for something, or you're using up resources doing that, so it has to be worth it for the resources you're going to like to get. So there's the simple technological advance of allowing revisiting a previous level opens up a lot of design work that has to be done to make the game nice, interesting, ungrindy, whatever you're particularly aiming for. Because if you can just go back every time, get every item, go sell it for even 1 coin at a shop, if you have a basic economic system in which everything has some value, which is itself a lack of honesty and simulation in a way, because if in a fully realised world where everyone could run back and forth and do these things, then there would be no economic value to it. So sometimes the problems with increased realistic simulation can be solved by making it more realistic in other ways. But if realism isn't your aim in the first place, then like you can just not try to be realistic in the first place. Like, yeah, and the Bandy kind of thing, it's really interesting actually. It's like the strategy in those games is kind of to grind, in a sense, by playing the safer levels over and over again until you have enough resources to go deeper. But the kind of interesting challenge of that is estimating at what point you have the strength built up to safely go deeper. Anyway, why I brought this up was because I wanted to really talk about what's, as far as I know, a new development, a new idea in the genre, which is in the game Rift Wizard, which I mentioned a few weeks ago, I think. So that has the basic rogue setup that after each level you go to another level and you can't go back. It has a choice, however, of which subsequent levels you can go to. And personally, I've designed quite a few prototypes in which I offered a choice of subsequent levels to go to, and I was never satisfied with how it worked out. Because if it's just, if you don't give any information about what level to go, what each level has, then it's not even a choice at all. It's just. But so you have to give some information, and so I'd give information about what treasures would be on that level and what enemies would be on that level. And I never found a sweet spot where it was actually balanced to where the knowledge of the enemies would like where those two things could balance against each other in a way that made the choice rich. Generally, like, you want the best treasure to get the highest score or to have the best chances at completing the game, so you want to go to the level with the best treasure. And what enemies there aren't going to put you off that, because not choosing that gain, not choosing that reward, is taking a bigger risk, and choosing to not have the resources, to not have the best resources. So you always have to take the highest risk to get the highest reward. It's really a recurring theme in roguelike design challenges. Rift Wizard, like, it has this problem to some extent, but there's a lot of different factors that make it work in the design. So none of the specific treasures that you find are usually critical. Like, a mana potion is good to have, but there will be enough mana potions generated, so you could just sometimes choose them. Usually if you have a winning game, you have a few mana potions left over. Like, things like the golden stopwatch are, like, really strong, but not critical, because the wizard spells are of similar power level. And yeah, the monsters having some of them 100% resistances gives some choices based on what build you have, what you can deal with. But really the factor that makes it work, which is like so simple that I wish I'd thought of it, is that you don't just see the resources and challenges on the next level. You see the entire map is just generated ahead of time. You see 3 different maps and you choose which one to go to. And it's just like, it's just so good. It's just like, it's like it's not even a thing, but it's just like, it works. Yeah, because then you, seeing the level, you can plan, if I start on this level, I could maybe corner these enemies in the tight corridors, or I could start in this open space because I have a spell that works well in open spaces. Like, there's ways it interacts with your build that it really makes for significant choices. And what's just really nice about it is that you can engage with this choice in a meaningful way, even as a complete beginner at the game, because you might be wrong in your evaluations of the risk of each level, but you can look at the map, make a plan based on where you'd be, where you would expect the enemies to move to, and reason using your basic beginner's understanding of the game about what would be a good choice. A lot of games a lot of games that sort of have choices that aren't strategic until you know the game very well, know all of the options, know the relative values of each piece and so on. Like Slay the Spire, for example, it has this map where you're choosing to go to a hard challenge or an easy challenge or a shop, and like at a beginner level of play, you're just like, I'll go see what's there, I guess. So it is a choice, but I don't feel it's usually a strategic choice. If there's a particular circumstance, like you're on very low health, you can't face a difficult challenge no matter what, then you'll choose strategically. But otherwise you're choosing exploratively. Like, let's see what these kinds of things might have in them. And once you've explored all the options and you know what the possibilities are in each category, then you can start making a strategic choice